When I look back at my childhood, one of my fondest memories was laying down in the snow, sitting in the silence, and just letting my imagination drift. A movie that gave me that same feeling was Ron Howard's version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I remember the unexpected feeling I got when the camera went inside the snowflake. That scene broke the limits of what I thought was possible through filmmaking and played a huge part in my creative journey. Over 20 years later, I had an idea. Could I bring my childhood dream to life? Are my design skills and technology at a point in time where it would be enough? There's only one way to find out. So how did I do it? In order to keep my sanity, I started by breaking the sequence into 3 scenes. The first scene I decided to tackle was the falling snowflake. I paused on a frame in the sequence where I got the best view of the snowflake geometry, brought the screenshot inside Adobe Illustrator as a reference to start building out a 2D mock-up of the snowflake. When I imported the reference image into Blender, in order to get the proper light refraction I wanted inside the snowflake to get the reflective diamond look, I needed the topology, or the shape of the mesh, to be very clean and precise for it to work properly, so I had to model the snowflake from scratch. Then I brought in an HDRI from Polyhaven, which projects light and color values onto your model, rather than having to set up a custom 3D light in the scene. For the material shader, I used Point Cloud's diamond shader technique to get a colored refraction look, as well as a mix shader for the noise displacement frost effect. The last piece missing in the scene was the background snow falling. I built a basic particle emission system and messed around with the size, random rotation, and other physics called the Brownian effect to create snowflakes that felt natural. I also adjusted the depth of field with a duplicate camera so that as we got closer to the hero snowflake, the background flakes became even more blurry to bring the focus on our snowflake. Snowflake shot complete. Now, this is where I moved on to what I call the nervous system inside the snowflake. This is where everything started to fall apart. I spent hours trying to figure out different techniques to accomplish this fascinating organic Seuss style geometry, but I hit a wall. I honestly didn't know what to do, so I did what any professional would do. I ignored it and worked on the next thing I knew how to do to give myself a confidence boost. The next scene. Onto the mountain shot. So I started out with using Blender's built-in Ant Landscape Builder, then created a completely separate mesh for the top of the mountain to create a higher level of detail as the camera got closer. The most important thing I kept in my head through this scene was the sense of scale. The mountain, the trees, the town, the clouds, they all had to work together or else something would feel off. Even though I had a very low poly mesh as my mountain, I needed to bring a high level of detail to make sure it felt to scale. So I spent a lot of time adjusting the snow and rock settings on the mountain. Shout out to this Snowy Mountain tutorial. The thing that really made it feel to scale was the trees. This is the only asset I purchased for the project. I think it was $30 on Turbo Squid, but it was worth it. I used a hair particle system on the mountain to randomly spread the trees over the surface, then used the wave painting method to tell Blender where to and not to put the trees. Now for the town. Now this is where I took some creative license from the original version. For my version, I really wanted to create 3D versions of the original book illustrations rather than Ron Howard's rendition. So I spent way too much time building Whoville houses from scratch and hand placing them. Once I put them in place, then came the clouds in the background. To save my computer from crashing, I decided to make a matte painting instead of hundreds of mountains for the background. I accomplished this by bringing in the HDRI I was using to light the scene into Photoshop, then used AI-generated prompts to create a mountain horizon. Once I placed the image as a background inside of Blender, the mountains were not as high quality as I would like, but I knew that they would mostly be covered by clouds and blurred from the camera, so I waited to see if it would work, and it did. For the clouds, this is where my creative breakthrough happened. I needed different textured clouds for the summit and the sky, and in order to get the look and control I needed, I followed a new method of cloud making by FX Forge. Through randomly selecting faces on a plane, deleting the excess faces, then cycling through the displacement, solidify, and remesh modifiers over and over until you get the cloud look you want, then isolating the meshes and filling them with principled volume shaders. Once I perfected this method, I realized that I could use this exact same technique not for clouds, but for the nervous system scene. Mountain scene complete. Now on to our final shot. Rather than starting with a plane, I went back to my original method using noise textures and geometry nodes to get close to what I was going for. Then I used the cloud building technique to get the rest of the way there. The base shape was a rectangle, then duplicated and rotated multiple times to create a nerve tunnel I would fly my camera through. Once I had the nerves in the camera path, I made a new collection of clouds and hand placed them to fill the composition and also any background gaps to create an illusion that it's endless. For the crystallized shader of nerves, I followed a procedural glitter tutorial by ChipTech, and the frost was sort of a duplicate from the snowflake blended together with the mix shader. I used an HDRI for the lighting and some sun lamps, and played with the color palette slightly, and bam, final shot complete. The compositing I did was very minimal. At the end of the snowflake, I created a hand-animated high feather mask to bring us into the nervous system, and also did a scale animation so it matched the movement from inside the snowflake, and added a deep glow plugin to each scene to soften everything to give it a misty glow. I got lazy towards the end and just put a basic fade from the nervous system through the cloud to the mountain, but it gets the job done. This was definitely a winter passion project, but I'm so happy with the results. Let me know if you think it holds up against the original scene. Hope you learned something today and look forward to seeing you in the next one.